Need to be taught what humility looks like.
Don't move, let me see. The engagement is over. I think we both knew it was over before today. I just didn't know why until I watched you smile.
The coffee hit Naomi Grant before she understood what was happening. 1 second, she was setting a cup down on a linen table at the most beautiful garden party she had ever worked. The next, scalding liquid was running down her hair, her cheek, the collar of her uniform. She dropped to one knee on the grass, while Vivian stood in a bright yellow dress, still holding the cup, smiling like she had won something. Before we go on, tell us where you're watching from. Your city, your state, your country. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you believe dignity isn't something you have to be rich to afford, stay with me all the way to the end. Now, let me take you back to how this morning began. 6 hours earlier, Naomi was on the floor of her apartment in a Riverhead walk-up, cross-legged in front of a second-hand sewing machine that ran a little loud and stopped exactly when it wanted to. A wedding gown lay across her knees. Not hers, a client's. A young woman named Priya, who was getting married in 3 weeks, and had found Naomi through a neighbor, who had found her through another neighbor. The seam allowance was wrong. Whoever had built the dress had cut corners where the bodice met the waist, and it pulled every time Priya took a breath. Naomi had stayed up past 1 in the morning, taking it apart and building it back the right way, and now, in the gray light before her shift, she pressed the last of it flat with her thumb, and felt the small, clean satisfaction of a thing that used to be broken and now was not. She had a name for what she was building: Grant Alterations. It existed on a hand-lettered card, in a shoebox of receipts under her bed, and in a checking account she added to every single week, no matter what. 12 clients now. Last spring it had been 4. She wanted a real space by the time she was 30, a storefront with a window and her name on the glass. And she was going to get there the slow, honest way, 1 hem and 1 zipper and 1 saved dollar at a time. The staffing shifts paid for the dream, while the dream got its feet under it. Weddings, galas, corporate dinners, the endless summer parties of people who owned more houses than they could sleep in. The work did not embarrass her. Her grandmother had cleaned other people's homes for 30 years and raised 3 children, who all finished school. And she had taught Naomi that there was no shame in honest labor, only in how you treated the people doing it. "You are humming again," Kiana said from the doorway, still in her sleep shirt, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Kiana was her roommate and, on days like today, her co-worker. She had gotten Naomi onto the estate roster back in the spring. "You only hum when you fixed something." Priya's dress. Naomi held it up. "It fought me. You won. I always win." Naomi took the mug and drank. Eventually, they rode out to Southampton together, in Kiana's ancient Corolla, with the windows down, because the air conditioning had died in June. The Hamptons in July looked like a postcard somebody had ironed. Hedges cut into walls. Lawns so green they seemed printed. And then the Merritt estate, at the end of a private drive lined with pin oaks, a pale stone house the size of a small college, with a lawn that rolled all the way down toward a line of dunes, and, beyond them, the flat, bright plate of the ocean. "Whose money is this?" Naomi asked, because she genuinely did not know. She never asked whose party it was until she was inside it. The names all blurred. "Grayson Merritt," Kiana said. "Shipping. Logistics. One of those companies that moves everybody else's stuff. Self-made, supposedly. It's his engagement party. He's getting married on his own lawn? Rich people do everything on their own lawn." Kiana killed the engine. Head down, hands busy, smile at nobody. You know the drill. These aren't the tipping kind. The staff entrance was around the back, through a mudroom the size of Naomi's whole apartment. A man was waiting for them there with a clipboard and the tight, sweating energy of someone who had been afraid since dawn. Mr. Prescott, the event coordinator. He looked at Naomi's shoes, at her hairline, at the seams of her uniform, and found all of it acceptable in the way a man finds a knife acceptable, by checking the edge. Garden service, he told her. Dessert lawn. The long tables by the roses. You do not initiate conversation. You do not stand still. If Miss Sinclair asks you for anything, the answer is yes, and the answer is immediate. He lowered his voice, though there was no one to hear. The Sinclairs and the Merritts are about to become one family. This afternoon has to be perfect. Perfect means invisible. Are we clear? We're clear, Naomi said. She pinned on her apron, tucked a threaded needle into the hem of it, out of a habit older than she was, and went out into the light. For the first hour it was easy. Guests drifted across the lawn in linen and pale silk. Women in wide hats, men with drinks sweating in their hands. Everyone tan in the specific way of people who are tan on purpose. Naomi moved among them and through them, and, mostly, unseen by them. She refilled water. She cleared plates. When an older woman's pearl bracelet snagged and popped its clasp, Naomi caught it before it hit the grass and had it closed and back on the woman's wrist in under a minute, and the woman said, "Oh, aren't you clever?" without ever quite looking at her face, and drifted off. When a corner of the long tablecloth caught on a chair leg and tore, Naomi knelt and folded the raw edge under, and tacked it with 3 quick stitches from the needle in her apron so it would not run. And nobody noticed that either, which was exactly how she liked it. She was good at making broken things look like they had never broken at all. It was the most satisfying feeling she knew. Then Vivian Sinclair arrived on the dessert lawn, and the temperature of the afternoon changed. Naomi heard her before she saw her, that particular carrying voice that expects a room to rearrange itself. The bride-to-be wore a bright yellow dress that moved like water and a gold belt that probably cost a year of Naomi's rent, and she came through the party, trailing 3 friends and a slick of complaint. The flowers were too pale. The champagne was warm. Who had approved these napkins? She sent back a plate of macarons, because the pistachio ones were on the same tier as the raspberry, and she said it loud enough that a busboy went red to his ears. If this is already getting under your skin, you're not alone, and it is going to matter, so stay with me. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever watched someone treat a waiter, a cleaner, a stranger, like they were furniture? Now, back to the lawn. Vivian set her handbag on the corner of the dessert table, a small structured thing in cream leather, and set her coffee cup beside it, and took out her phone to answer it. And in reaching for the phone, she caught the cup with her own elbow. Naomi saw it happen the way you see a glass go off the edge of a counter, that half second where your whole body knows and your hands are already too far away. The cup tipped. Coffee ran across the white cloth and pooled against the base of the bag, and a dark stain crept up the cream leather like a tide. For a moment, Vivian only stared at it. Then she looked up, and her eyes found the nearest person in a uniform, and that person was Naomi. "You," Vivian said. "You did this." "Ma'am, I was across the table." Naomi kept her voice level and low. "I didn't touch the cup. This bag is worth more than you make in a year, and you have ruined it." Vivian's voice climbed a step, and heads began to turn. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" 2 of the guests had seen it. Naomi knew they had, because she had watched them watch it. An older man in a blue blazer near the roses, and a young woman with a camera phone who had been filming the dessert display for reasons of her own. Neither of them said a word. The man found something fascinating in his drink. The young woman lowered her phone and looked at the grass. Nobody wanted to be the person who corrected Vivian Sinclair at her own engagement party. Mr. Prescott appeared at Naomi's side so fast, he must have been watching from the terrace. He did not ask what happened. He did not look at the bag or the cloth or the physics of the thing. He looked at Naomi with pure animal fear on his face, and he leaned in and said, under his breath, "Apologize. Now, whatever she wants, just make it stop." Naomi looked at the 2 guests who had seen. She looked at the wet brown stain and the elbow that had made it. She looked at Prescott, who was asking her, plainly, to lie, because a lie was cheaper than a powerful woman's bad mood. "I'm sorry the bag is stained," Naomi said, to Vivian, evenly. "I can take it inside and treat the leather before it sets. I've done it before, but I didn't spill it, and I won't say I did." The lawn went quiet in a circle around them. She was not being defiant. She was not raising her voice, or lifting her chin, or making a scene. She was simply refusing to hand over the one thing that had always been hers to keep, which was the truth about what her own two hands had and had not done. She had cleaned houses in her heart alongside her grandmother her whole life, and she had promised herself a long time ago that whatever she gave up to survive, she would not give up that. Something in Vivian's face closed like a door. "You won't." Vivian set down the ruined bag. She reached to the table and picked up a fresh cup, full, still steaming, the coffee somebody had just poured and not yet touched. "People like you," she said, and the word people did an enormous amount of ugly work, need to be taught what humility looks like. Naomi saw it coming half a heartbeat before it came, and there was nowhere to go. The coffee hit her before she understood it was happening, burning liquid across her hair, her cheek, her neck, the collar of her uniform. Heat bloomed against her skin, and the pain arrived a second behind it, sharp and immediate, and she dropped to one knee on the grass with a cry she could not swallow. The cup shattered against the flagstone at the table's edge. Somewhere a woman gasped. Somewhere else, and this was the part that would stay with Naomi longest, somebody laughed. A short, bright bark of laughter, quickly smothered. Above her, Vivian stood with the empty saucer still in her hand, and that small, satisfied smile, as if a stubborn stain had finally been scrubbed out of the afternoon. "That should teach you," she said, "not to embarrass me." And then the doors of the house opened, and a man came down across the lawn, from the direction of the golf course, and everything stopped. He was still in his golf clothes, a white polo and pale trousers, an iron in one hand, sweat at his temples from the back nine. He was tall and dark-haired and moved fast, and his eyes went from the shattered cup to the kneeling woman, to his fiancée with the saucer in her hand, and he stopped cold, 10 feet away, like he had walked into a pane of glass. Grayson Merritt had built a company that moved 100,000 tons of other people's cargo across the ocean every week. He had negotiated with governments. He had made and unmade fortunes in rooms full of men who were afraid of him, and for a long, strange second, standing on his own lawn at his own engagement party, he could not make his feet move at all, because the woman on the grass had lifted her face toward him, coffee still running off her jaw, and he knew her. He did not know from where, not yet, but he knew her the way you know a song before you can name it, a recognition that arrived in his chest before it reached his mind, and it turned him to stone in front of 200 people. Then it broke, and he dropped the golf club in the grass and crossed the last 10 feet at a run. He went down on his knees beside her, without any thought for the $1,000 trousers or the 200 watching faces. Up close, he could see the skin already going pink and angry along her cheek and her collarbone, and the way she was holding herself very still and very upright, refusing to fold, and something about that stillness pulled at a memory he could not reach. "Don't move," he said. His voice came out low and rough. "Let me see." He turned, fast, and swept his arm across the dessert table, sending cups and a tower of macarons to the grass, and grabbed the long linen tablecloth, and folded it in two, and pressed the cool, clean underside of it gently against her cheek and her neck. "Water," he said, not loudly, and when nobody moved, he said it again, with something underneath it that made 3 waiters break for the house at once. "Cold water, and the first aid kit from the pool house. Now, Grayson." Vivian's voice had changed. The satisfaction was gone, and something careful had come in behind it. "Grayson, she was rude to me. She ruined my bag. Be quiet." He did not shout it. He did not even look at her. He kept the cool cloth against Naomi's burned skin, with a surgeon's steadiness, and looked only at Naomi. "Can you breathe all right? Any coffee in your eyes? I'm okay?" Naomi's voice shook, and she hated that it shook. It caught my cheek, not my eyes. "I'm okay." "You're not okay. You were just assaulted at a garden party." He said it flatly, like a fact. He was entering into a ledger. A waiter arrived with a pitcher and a stack of clean napkins, and Grayson wet one and folded it and traded it for the tablecloth. And all the while his eyes kept moving over her face, like a man reading something in a language he used to speak. Vivian recovered enough to be indignant. "You are humiliating me, in front of everyone, over the help," Grayson finally looked at her, and the look was not angry, which was somehow worse. It was the look of a man, seeing a person clearly for the first time, and finding much less there than he had hoped. "You threw scalding coffee in a woman's face," he said quietly, "because she wouldn't lie for you, and you did it in front of 200 people, and you smiled. Being my fiancé doesn't give you the right to do that. Nothing gives you the right to do that." A murmur went through the crowd like wind through the pin oaks. He turned back to Naomi. "What's your name?" "Naomi." She pressed the cold napkin to her jaw where it hurt worst. "Naomi Grant." He said it back, softly, like he was setting it somewhere safe. "Naomi Grant." And then he frowned, because the name was not the thing. The name did not fit the recognition, and he was staring at her hands now, at her fingers, at the threaded needle tucked into the hem of her apron catching the light, and something moved behind his eyes that she could not read at all. She had expected a lot of things from this afternoon. Being stared at by a billionaire on the grass like she was a ghost he had been waiting for was not one of them. "Do I?" He stopped himself, started again. "Have we met?" "No," Naomi said. "I'd remember." But he was not listening anymore. He was looking at the way she had, without thinking, without even seeming to notice she was doing it, taken the torn hem of the tablecloth in her free hand and folded the raw edge under. The exact gesture of a person who cannot leave a broken thing broken, even while her own face is burning. And something came up in his chest so hard and so fast that for a second he could not speak, because he had seen those hands do that exact thing before, a long time ago, on the worst night of his life. Vivian was still talking. The crowd was still murmuring. Mr. Prescott was hovering at the edge of the disaster, gray-faced, watching his career leave his body. And Grayson Merritt knelt on his own lawn beside a maid his fiancée had just burned, and could not stop looking at her hands, and had absolutely no idea yet how completely the ground beneath his whole life had just given way. What happened next, he would think later, was the most important thing he had done in 10 years, and it started with a phone. "Somebody was filming," Grayson said. He stood and helped Naomi to her feet with a hand under her elbow, careful of the burn, and turned to the crowd. "I saw a phone up when I came across the lawn. The dessert table. Who was it?" Silence. 200 people found things to look at. "I'm not going to ask twice." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He was a man whose quiet voice moved cargo across oceans. Someone at this party recorded what just happened. I would like to see it now. The young woman with the camera phone, a niece of somebody, 22 years old and clearly wishing she were anywhere else, stepped forward with the phone held out in front of her like it was hot. "I was filming the desserts," she said. "I didn't mean, it's on here." Grayson took the phone. He watched it once, his face very still. Then he turned the screen around and held it up and walked a slow arc so that the front rows of the crowd could see. And he played it again out loud. The little speaker was tinny, but the picture was clear. There was Vivian, reaching for her phone. There was her own elbow catching her own cup. There was the coffee running into the bag. There was Naomi, across the table, hands full, nowhere near it. There was Vivian's mouth moving, "You did this," and Naomi's calm refusal. "I didn't spill it, and I won't say I did." And then, unmistakable, in high definition, Vivian picking up the fresh full cup and throwing it into Naomi's face, and the little smile after. The lawn was so quiet Naomi could hear the ocean. Vivian's face had gone the color of the tablecloth. It's out of context. It doesn't show. It shows everything. Grayson handed the phone back to the young woman. "Thank you. Delete it or keep it. That's your business. It's already done what it needed to do." He turned to Mr. Prescott, who flinched. "You saw the whole thing, and your response was to tell this woman to apologize." It was not a question. Prescott's mouth opened, and nothing came out. "You work events at this house often. You won't after today. Not because I'm angry, because when it mattered, you protected the wrong person, and I can't have that on any lawn of mine." He turned last to Vivian, and here his voice dropped so low that the back rows leaned in. "The engagement is over. I think we both knew it was over before today. I just didn't know why until I watched you smile." Vivian's composure came apart in stages, the way a wall comes apart. one section holding, while the next one crumbles. "You are throwing away everything," she said, and her voice cracked. "The merger, our families, everything Walter built, over a maid." "Over whom you are," Grayson said. "The maid just happened to be the thing that finally showed me." He did not make a speech. He did not have security remove anyone. He simply asked the party, in a normal voice, to please give them the afternoon. And something in the way he said it turned 200 people back toward their cars in near silence. The great engine of the party grinding to a halt, valets running, the golf cart carrying an ashen woman in a yellow dress away up the drive. Kiana appeared out of the crowd and gripped Naomi's uninjured hand hard and would not let go. 20 minutes later, Naomi sat on a stool in an enormous, sunlit kitchen while a doctor, who lived 2 houses down, summoned by a single phone call, cleaned the burns along her cheek and neck and pronounced them real but shallow, painful for a week, no scarring if she kept them covered. Grayson stood by the long windows with his arms crossed and did not leave, and did not hover, and did not perform. He just stayed, the way you stay by someone. When the doctor had gone, he pulled a stool across from her and sat, so that they were at the same level, and for a moment neither of them said anything. "You can send me the medical bill," he said finally, "and your wages for today, doubled, for the ruined uniform and for all of it. That's not charity. It's the least of what's owed. But I didn't keep you here for that." He rubbed the back of his neck, and for a second the billionaire was gone, and there was just a tired man who had lost something in a memory and could not find his way back to it. "I need to ask you something, and it's going to sound insane. Today's already insane," Naomi said. "Go ahead. 10 years ago," he said it slowly, "I was 28. My first company had just died. Not slowed down. Died. I had signed personal guarantees I shouldn't have signed. And I lost the apartment. And I lost the car. And I was 3 days from lost. And it was the coldest week of the winter. And I was sitting in a bus depot in Camden at 2 in the morning because it was warm and nobody made you leave. My coat had a long tear down the whole left side from a fence I'd climbed like an idiot moving the last of my things. And I was sitting there deciding, honestly deciding, whether there was any point in getting on the 6 a.m. bus or any bus ever again. Naomi had gone very still. There was a girl working the night counter, or waiting for a bus herself, I never knew which. 17, maybe 18. And she looked at my coat, this ruined coat, and she came over with a little kit out of her bag, thread and a needle, and without asking she sat down next to a stranger at 2 in the morning, and she sewed the tear shut. Bright orange thread, because it was the only color she had. Made the ugliest, sturdiest seam I have ever seen in my life. His voice had gone rough, and while she did it, she said one thing to me. She said, "A tear doesn't mean it's ruined." Naomi's voice came out barely above a whisper. "It just means it needs someone patient." The kitchen was completely silent. Grayson stared at her, and his eyes were bright and wet, this man who negotiated with governments. And he said, "I never got your name. The bus came, and I got on it because you'd made me feel like maybe the tear wasn't the end of the thing. And by the time I turned around to thank you, the doors had closed. I have looked for you for 10 years. I kept the coat. I still have the coat, Naomi. Orange thread and all. It's the only thing I own from before the money that I would run into a fire for." Naomi's own eyes had filled. She remembered it. She had been 17 and headed to her cousin's in Trenton with everything she owned in a duffel bag, and there had been a man in a torn coat with a face like the end of the world, and her grandmother's voice in her head, "You fix what's in front of you, baby." And she had done the only thing she knew how to do, which was sew. "I didn't know if it helped," she said. "I've wondered. Some nights, I really wondered." "It helped," Grayson said. "It's the reason there's anything to wonder about." For a moment, they just looked at each other, 10 years folding down into a warm kitchen, and a stool, and the smell of burn cream, and the sea outside. And then Naomi did something that surprised them both. She sat up straight, and she wiped her eyes with the back of her uninjured hand, and she put the wall back up, gently but completely. "That's a beautiful thing to hear," she said. "It really is, and I'm glad the coat helped." But I need you to know something, Mr. Merritt, before this goes anywhere either of us imagines it's going. She met his eyes without flinching, the same way she had met Vivian's. I am not a fairy tale. I'm not the poor girl who fixed your coat and gets swept into the big house. I have a life I'm building with my own hands, and it's small right now, but it's mine, and I don't need rescuing, and I won't be anybody's good deed. Today your fiancé burned me for sport, and you did the decent thing. That doesn't make me yours to fix. I've had enough of powerful people deciding what I am. Grayson was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled, and it was a real one. The first real one Naomi had seen on him. You know, he said, that's almost exactly what you said to me in the bus depot. In different words, that the tear needed someone patient. Not someone with money, someone patient. He stood and picked up a card from the counter and wrote a number on the back of it and set it in front of her without pushing it any closer. I'm not going to fix you. You're the least broken person I've met in 10 years. But when your face is healed, I'd like to buy you a coffee that stays in the cup and hear about the life you're building, as two people who once met at the bottom of things. That's all. No big house, no good deed, just that. Naomi looked at the card and did not push it away. That might have been the whole story. A burn and a reunion, and a coffee that stayed in the cup. But there was a reason Vivian Sinclair had said the merger, and Walter built, and everything. And that reason was already in a car on the Montauk Highway, driving fast toward the estate. And he was not a man who let go of a deal because a groom had a change of heart on a lawn. Walter Boyd had been Grayson's mentor since Grayson was 31, and hungry, and brilliant, and reckless. Boyd sat on the board of Meridian and held the memory of Grayson's dead father like a deed. It was Boyd who had introduced Grayson to Vivian Sinclair 18 months ago, and Boyd who had explained, patiently, over good scotch, that the Sinclair family firm controlled the port access and the political relationships that Meridian needed to close the biggest expansion in its history, and that a marriage would knit the two houses together in a way no contract ever could. Grayson had gone along with it the way he had gone along with a lot of things in the last few years, out of a kind of tired momentum, feeling less and less, telling himself that feeling nothing was a reasonable price for building something enormous. Boyd arrived at the estate an hour after the last guest had gone and found Grayson in the study, holding a coat. An old coat, cheap, with a long crooked orange seam down the left side, laid across his knees like something living. I've had 4 phone calls, Boyd said, not sitting. There's a video, Grayson. Vivian throwing coffee on a caterer. It's already moving. And you ended the engagement on the lawn in front of the entire Sinclair connection. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Do you understand what you've done to the timeline? The Sinclairs will pull the port agreement out of spite. You have handed a competitor the expansion. Years of work. I know exactly what I've done, Grayson said. He did not look up from the coat. Then fix it. It's not too late. It was a scene. Scenes blow over. Send the woman a settlement and a non-disclosure. Apologize to Vivian. Let the families smooth it. People marry for worse reasons than a port, and stay married for worse reasons than that. Boyd's voice softened into the register that had steered Grayson for a decade. Your father built Meridian brick by brick, and died before he saw what it could become. Don't throw away the last mile of it because a girl reminded you that you have a conscience. Conscience is expensive, son. Sentiment is a luxury. Men in our position learn to ration. Grayson looked up then. Who is she? He asked. The woman in the video. Do you know her name? Boyd blinked. Does it matter? That's the whole answer, isn't it? Grayson stood, the coat over his arm. In 10 years, you never once asked me why I kept a torn coat in a glass frame in my office. You thought it was an eccentricity. It's the only honest thing in the building, Walter. A stranger sewed it shut the night I had decided to stop, and she asked for nothing, and I have spent a decade becoming a man that stranger would be ashamed of. Ration by ration, deal by deal, until I could stand on my own lawn and watch my fiancé burn a woman's face, and my first instinct was to worry about the timeline. His jaw tightened. The stranger is her, Walter. Naomi. The girl from the depot is the maid in the video. 10 years. And she walks back into my life the same afternoon I finally see what I'd let you talk me into becoming. I'm not going to fix that by making her sign a piece of paper. Boyd stared at him for a long moment, recalculating, the way a man recalculates when the ground he is standing on turns out to be someone else's. The board will not follow you off a cliff for a love story, he said, cold now. There are people who will use this. There are people who already are. And he left, and his taillights went down the drive, and Grayson stood alone in the study with the coat and understood that the afternoon had not ended anything. It had started it. By Monday, the video was everywhere, but not the way Boyd had feared. The clip of Vivian throwing the coffee ran alongside a second clip somebody had posted, filmed on a different phone from a different angle, of a man in golf clothes running across a lawn and going down on his knees in the grass. The internet, which is cruel about many things, decided to be kind about this one. But kindness on the internet is a flood, and it does not care who it drowns. And within 2 days, it had found Naomi Grant. They found her business card, her 12 clients, her Riverhead walk-up. Some of it was lovely, orders pouring in, strangers wanting the woman with the good heart to hem their trousers. And some of it was poison. Because the same week, an anonymous account began seeding a different story, that the maid had provoked it, that she was an opportunist, that the whole thing was staged so she could land a billionaire, that a woman who mends wedding dresses for a living had somehow orchestrated a reunion 10 years in the making. It was absurd. It was also effective, because absurd and effective are old friends. The staffing agency, spooked, took Naomi off the roster. We can't have the drama, you understand. 2 of her alterations clients quietly stopped answering. She knew where it came from. She did not need proof to know that a Sinclair could buy a narrative as easily as a handbag. Grayson called. She let it ring. He came to Riverhead and stood at the bottom of her walk-up, and she watched him from the window and did not go down. And after 20 minutes, he left a paper bag on the step with a real first aid kit in it, the good kind, and a note that said only, "No big house. When you're ready. G," and drove away without knocking again. And she cried a little at that, at the not knocking, which was the most respectful thing anyone with that much money had ever done for her. But she made her decision the way she made all her decisions, standing at her sewing machine at midnight with her hands busy. She would step back, not out of fear, out of arithmetic. She had watched what one afternoon near his world had done to her small, clean life in a week, and she could do the math on what a year of it would do. He was going to lose a company over her, or he was going to keep the company and lose himself again. And either way, she would be the reason. The maid who cost the great man everything, and she would rather stitch hems in obscurity for the rest of her life than become that. She wrote him a note of her own. Careful, kind, final. I'm glad the coat helped. I'm glad you saw yourself. But I fixed a tear once, a long time ago, and I don't think it was so you could tear something else apart to thank me. Keep the company. I'd like to keep what I'm building. That's not a rejection. It's the same thing I told you in the depot. Some things just need someone patient, and patient means letting go. She sealed it and mailed it and turned off her phone and cried and went back to work, because work was the one country where nobody could take her citizenship away. She did not know that the day her note arrived, Grayson Merritt was in a boardroom on the 40th floor of Meridian's tower in the city, with the port agreement in front of him, and a pen in his hand, and Walter Boyd on his right, and 11 directors watching, being told, in the reasonable voices of reasonable men, that all he had to do was issue a statement distancing the company from the incident, express regret for his personal conduct, confirm that discussions with the Sinclair Group were ongoing, and sign, and it would all go back to the way it was. That the woman had, helpfully, removed herself. That she had, in fact, just sent word. Boyd slid Naomi's note across the table, her small, even handwriting facing up. Keep the company. Let me keep the small, good thing I'm building. Obtained God knew how, and said, gently, even she agrees, son. She's letting you off the hook. Take the gift. Grayson picked up the note. He read it once. He read the last line twice. Some things just need someone patient, and patient means letting go. And then he did something no one in that room expected. He laughed, quietly, and set down the pen, and reached into the leather bag at his feet and took out the coat. He laid it on the boardroom table, on top of the port agreement, A cheap torn coat with a crooked orange seam, in a room full of $10,000 suits. A woman sewed this shut for me at 2 in the morning when I was 28 and finished, he said, with the only thread she had, and she asked for nothing, and it's the reason I'm alive to sit in this chair. And for 10 years I have let this room, and you, Walter, teach me to ration exactly the thing she gave me for free. She thinks stepping aside is patience. She's wrong about that, and it's the only thing she's ever been wrong about. Because patience isn't letting go of the good thing. It's refusing to tear something apart to keep the expensive thing. He looked around the table. I'm not signing. Not because of a woman, because of a mirror. The Sinclair deal is dead. We'll build the expansion slower and clean, on ports that will have us without a marriage. And it will take 3 years longer. And I will sleep every one of those 1,000 nights. Boyd stood. You're making a mistake that will cost this company. You introduced me to a woman who burns people for sport and called it strategy, Walter. You've been rationing my conscience for a decade and calling it wisdom. I think you should resign from this board, and I think you know why. And I think if you don't, the video that's currently teaching the country how a man should kneel is going to be joined by the story of who paid to call the woman in it a liar. I'd start with that account if I were the press. He picked up the coat and folded it over his arm. Meetings adjourned. Go home. We build it clean from here. He did not run to Riverhead that night. He was, whatever else, a patient man now, or trying to become one. He waited until her burns would be healed, the way she'd asked. And he did the work of unwinding a dead deal and steadying a shaken company. And he let the poison account get exposed by a reporter who did not need his help to smell it. And he watched, from a distance, the orders come back to grant alterations as the truth caught up. 12 clients becoming 40, 40 becoming a waiting list. And then, on a gray Tuesday in September, he drove out to Riverhead in an ordinary car, alone, and he did not stand at the bottom of the walk-up. He climbed the stairs and he knocked. Naomi opened the door with a threaded needle between her lips and a man's suit jacket over her arm, mid-alteration. Her cheek healed to a faint mark she'd stopped noticing. She took the needle out of her mouth. You knocked, she said. You told me to let you keep the small, good thing you're building. He had the coat with him, folded over his arm, orange seam showing. So I'm not here to buy it, or scale it, or move it into a big house. I'm here to ask if the woman who fixes what's in front of her would let me be one of the things in front of her, as an equal. I killed the deal, Naomi. Not for you. Because you were right about who I'd let myself become, and I'd rather build slow and clean than fast and hollow, and I learned that from an orange seam. He held out the coat. I've been carrying this for 10 years, waiting to give it back to the person who sewed it. It's yours. It was always yours. Whatever you decide about me, take the coat. Naomi looked at the coat, and at the crooked bright seam her own 17-year-old hands had made in the dark, and at the man holding it, who had walked away from a fortune rather than tear something apart, and had knocked instead of buying, and had waited for her face to heal like it mattered, because it did. She did not take the coat. Instead, she stepped back and opened the door wider, into a small apartment full of light and thread, and half-finished dresses, and a second-hand machine that ran a little loud, and she said, "Bring it inside. There's a spot on that seam that's finally starting to fray. 10 years is a long time for orange thread." She almost smiled. But a tear doesn't mean it's ruined. You know that better than most. It just means it needs someone patient. He came inside, and she closed the door, and on the little table by the window she laid the old coat down beside the suit jacket she was mending, 2 broken things among all the other things she was quietly, patiently, making whole, and she threaded a fresh needle, and this time when she sat down beside him, she already knew his name. If this story moved you even a little, do 3 quick things for me. Tap that like button so more people find it. Subscribe, because next time I've got a story that will stay with you even longer. And in the comments, tell me 1 word you believe every single person deserves to receive, no matter their job, their income, or the uniform they're wearing. I read every one, because wealth can command a room. But character is the only thing that ever changes one. Take care of the people who serve you. You never know who patched your coat when you had nothing. Thank you for watching.